Disturbing new details are emerging about the snake police say killed two young brothers in northern New Brunswick. According to the RCMP, the African rock python was kept in the very apartment where the brothers were sleeping. It's a type of snake that isn't even permitted in the province. The incident is raising serious questions about the safety of this kind of exotic pet and renewing calls for stricter regulations on these pets in the country. RCMP reached out to my next guest to help in their investigation. His name is Bruce Dugan, and he's the manager of the Magnetic Hill Zoo in Moncton, New Brunswick. My guest on the telephone this morning. Mr. Dugan, good morning.
Good morning, Heather.
I mentioned the RCMP contacted you as they go about their investigation. What has your role been with them so far?
Basically, they asked us if we could provide some assistance in the investigation to identify the species in question, the snake in question, and as well as to evaluate the general health of the collection of animals in Campbellton.
And have you done that yet?
Yes, we have.
And can you tell us any about the type of information you've provided police?
Well, we did identify the snake as an African rock python, and we provided some information with regards to the health of the collection of animals there.
And will you have an ongoing role in their investigation?
I expect that we will have moving forward, but there's nothing in the immediate future that I think that we'll be involved in. But if this case does end up in court, I expect we'll be involved at that point.
We don't know everything about where the investigation has led so far, but we do know from police yesterday, Mr. Dugan, about where this snake was kept. It wasn't in the store below as we thought originally. We learned yesterday it was in an enclosure in the actual apartment, sort of a, as I gather it, a big aquarium, a glass floor-to-ceiling kind of thing in the apartment. As you learned those details about where this snake was kept, did that or has that raised safety concerns for you?
Well, certainly. I did not see the enclosure itself, but I know when we keep large snakes of this type, pythons in particular, we have some very strict protocols with which we handle them and work with them within. We double lock doors. There's only one entry point and exit point. We make sure if there's any soft spots within the exhibit that they're double barricaded. And then, for instance, any ventilation tubes that they could get near or vents that they get near, we would put a double cover on and make sure that they're secure. So you have to be very, very careful in providing an enclosure for these animals so they cannot get out, because they're very, very good at getting out of their spaces. Whenever we go in, we make sure that we have an airlock system in place. In other words, you go through one door, close that behind you, then enter the second door. So there's no chance of escape.
That is a tight security protocol you have in place. We should be clear, you have 12 big snakes, not an African rock python, but you do have a Burmese python, I know, at the Magnetic Zoo, so you have that very much in place, and obviously something similar was not the situation in this apartment. We learned yesterday as well, Mr. Dugan, about the brothers, about Noah and Connor Bart, and how they spent their last day. They were on a farm in close contact with animals. Does that help us understand at all how the snake might have come to attack these two little boys?
It certainly could have been a factor. There's no question about that. I know that whenever we take out snakes of any kind, that we always make sure that we don't handle a rodent, for instance, prior to handling the snake, because the scent of the rodent will be on our hands, and the snake will recognize or think that that's food, because the scent of the rodent is on your skin. Very often, people would not be a target for big snakes like this because we have many other odors on us. We have deodorant and different perfumes from laundry soaps and different things that they would not recognize as a food source. So, it certainly could have played a factor in this case.
One of the things we've heard, the city of Montreal, for example, looking at its bylaws that govern exotic pets. St. Catharines also taking a look at its regulations to talk about bringing in a ban. And I'm thinking that in the days to come, municipalities across the country are going to be examining the regulations there because of what's happened in Campbellton. Do you think that's knee-jerk, or what do you think the appropriate response to this tragedy should be from a regulation standpoint?
Whenever something like this happens, I think we have to look at it very carefully and take whatever steps necessary to make sure that it doesn't happen again. These two little boys should not have died in vain. There should be some protocols put in place to protect that this will never happen again. So, whatever that takes, we need to put those restrictive measures in place.
Okay, so there may be talk of bans, but let me bring up some picture here that just found very, very interesting. You go online, Mr. Dugan, as you probably know, and if you write in "buy African rock python," sites pop up. You can get them for sale. I went to one, $99.99 for a small African rock python. I guess it'd be a matter of getting it in, but you can get these exotic reptiles. You can find them easily, relatively inexpensively. With that kind of ease, I mean, would a ban have any effect?
That's a good question. Certainly, you know, the rules and regulations across this country vary and differ from province to province. So, you know, whereas a small African rock python might fit within the confines of the regulations in a particular province, if it's under 3 meters, let's say, maybe they don't make specific reference to a species being banned. But it is much more difficult with the internet, for sure, because it makes these things very, very available.
All right. Mr. Dugan, it's a terrible story, and you have a key role in it, so thanks very much for sharing the information with us this morning. We'll be speaking again, I'm sure.
My pleasure, Heather. Thank you.